Well, Matthew Stevens, great to have you with us on Business Unlimited. You're the current, just newly appointed president of Barnsley and Rotherham Chamber of Commerce. How does it feel, first of all, to take that role on?
Thank you, Tim. Firstly, a very privileged role. I took on the role at the beginning of December. We've been lucky with the Chamber to have a fantastic president for the last 3 years through some really challenging times, obviously through COVID in Joe Allen. So yes, I hit the ground running in December, and it's been a really busy couple of months.
Obviously, there's a story there as to how you came to be in that position as president of Barnsley and Rotherham Chamber. That's a big deal, and clearly a position of influence for this area. But take us back to how your business life started and a bit of your story.
Yeah, a very proud Welshman, obviously spending probably longer of my adult life living in Yorkshire actually than I did in my hometown of Neath. But I set my journey off in Yorkshire back in 1992 when I went to university in Hull, and since then I've got into in my specialism within the property sector, and I've worked for a couple of businesses within the area since then, and most of my time has actually been spent working for a very enjoyable sort of 19 years at the Brook Group in Barnsley. I left that role towards the end of last year, and I'm now on a new path and a new adventure, which is very exciting. I feel really home here. I feel at home in Yorkshire. You know, it's very similar to where I grew up, really. So I see a lot of synergies between some of the places where I'm now working. Like, for example, I'm doing quite a lot of work in the Dearn, in particular, say in Goldthorpe, which, you know, I do feel that bond and that synergy from sort of former coal mining communities, which is where I was brought up, you know, by my parents. I've obviously met my wife now, and she's originally from Sheffield. So I've actually lived in Sheffield since 2006. But I've obviously spent most of that time working in and around sort of Barnsley, Rotherham, and Sheffield as well.
Now, as I understand, you've had a fairly eclectic career, if you want to call it a career, but as a businessman, what would you say is the thread that's run through your business career so far?
I think it's been clearly, obviously, integrity, a strong network. I've got a really good network of people that I've had long relationships with. I've actually forged some really good relationships with other partners, particularly the public. I'm a firm believer of the public and the private sector working together. I've come from a very entrepreneurial background. So my time spent working in Barnsley, we had a massively ambitious vision there, which was to turn basically 2 acres of the town centre into this vision of a large mixed use development at Gateway Plaza, which originally, you know, we started off on the back of a cigarette packet, a scheme which we took us probably about 15 years to deliver. I'm very proud of the role that I actually played in that, and I think running through that has always been, you know, treat people with respect, you know, and try and work with integrity, and do what you say. You know, if you make a promise, you know, you need to deliver it. And I think I've always been a strong advocate of that. And that's obviously going to continue into my new world, particularly with my role in the chamber. You know, if I say something, you know, I want to do it, and I want to take people to task where needed as well.
So there's a theme of property running through that all, isn't there, in terms of your journey, property development, land development. So in terms of the skills and the knowledge required around that, where would you say your specialism is? Is it in land management? Is it in commercial property dealing? What skills have you picked up along the way?
My first foray into property was in residential, and that was where the first sort of 10 years of my career spent. Now, that was either, you know, acquiring residential property or developing residential property. And as part of my own career progression, I then, you know, gained some, you know, invaluable experience in sort of construction. So I've got, you know, strong experience of getting things built, which is often challenging, and at the same time a strong sales background, which gave me that ability to obviously sell the property, and then transferred into that what I would call more the commercial property sector. So whether that's offices, you know, we built the offices for Barnsley Council. I've done offices in Sheffield for some large accountancy firm. You know, so I've got strong experience on the office side, and also delivering hotels for likes of, you know, Premier Inn, Travelodge, and some other brands as well. So, you know, I've got a really good experience across the property sector. And obviously, as an individual, I've done my own things with property as well. You know, I'm a landlord. I've got houses, and yeah, you know, it goes from sort of you know, a small sort of cottage somewhere, you know, in the outskirts of Sheffield to a sort of 60 million development in the centre of Barnsley. So I've got a really wide range of property experience.
What's been the most enjoyable part of that experience? Is it the large scale? Is it the small scale? Is it about the relationships? What really do you find exciting about that whole sector?
I'm really passionate about placemaking, and changing the look and feel of how development sites, really make a massive influence on its surroundings. Taking sort of the Barnsley idea really and seeing what the council have done. I've been proud to have been part of that in terms of I'm sitting on various boards in the town centre and I've had a bit of influence in terms of how things have gone. And I'm just feel passionate about place, be that on a very small scale or very large scale. Seeing what I did, for example, in the centre of Sheffield, we turned a building which had sat empty for 30 years into a real flagship. It was the former NUM building in the centre of Sheffield, and I was instrumental in bringing that scheme forward and getting it fully developed and fully let, which I'm very proud of to this day, really.
And looking back on all of that and the ups and downs of that, Matt, what key lessons do you think you've learned that you're now starting to apply into the context you find yourself now, which you're facilitating and supporting and bringing partnerships together and seeing large visions, supporting large visions? What lessons are you applying in that you've learned, you think?
It's a good question, actually. I think sometimes try and work with people rather than against them. So you can be critical. We're all critical. We're all critical of, certain local authorities and various other things in the past. But I think you need to, I think in some ways, local authorities are almost looking for the private sector to come on board with them on the journey, because it's not, they are not the answer to everything. We cannot expect, Rotherham Council and Sheffield City Council to provide support for everybody. It's just not possible. They've got enough of their issues. So I think one of the things I have learned is to work with people rather than against them. Yeah, I think also businesses really struggle with not knowing where to go. And I think one of the things that I've can sort of pride myself on is I've been a really good, strong networker, and I've always tried to link people, even where there's been no sort of advantage for me to do so. I've always felt that putting people in touch with other people to assist them is something that I'm quite proud of doing. That's part of my style. Other people may disagree, but that's the way I've always liked to do things. And of course, as a chamber, as a members organisation, I think it's really important that we do engage with our members and we do point our members in the right direction.
And now, bringing us up to date, you're sitting on a number of boards, not least the Goldthorpe Town Board for its development, and with some investment money that's scheduled to come to the town, which we could all sort of easily use the word levelling up. I'm not sure what that means to you, but how important do you see that role at the moment in somewhere like Goldthorpe, which obviously has a difficult past and a challenging past, but there's opportunity as well, isn't there?
Well, we talk about levelling up, it's the buzzword. I mean, let alone levelling up. I mean, you've got massive issues, not just about the south to the north or the east to the west. In the borough of Barnsley, you've got huge discrepancies in terms of life expectancy between one borough of Barnsley and another. We're talking double-digit years. If you live in one part of the town or the borough, you could live 10, 15 years longer than the other. I mean, that's just not acceptable. So it's not about levelling up north to south, although the south probably gets more of the levelling up than the north. It's about within the borough as well. And I think that the board that I'm really proud to be on, and I've been on from the start, is obviously the Towns Fund Board in Goldthorpe. We had an ambitious bid. I was a key part of that bid team. Again, private, public sector. I was there representing the chamber. We bid for an amount, and we've got just upwards of £23 million. That's not levelling up, that's Towns Fund. Barnsley's been a beneficiary recently of some levelling up funds, which is going to be used on a number of key strategic projects in the town centre as well. So, and I think I also have a strong involvement in the Inclusive Economy Board in Barnsley, which again, is another key board, and that's looking to work alongside the Barnsley 2030 group, which is another group in terms of where's that aspiration. It's about setting that bar really high. How can we fill these gaps? We've got 40,000 plus people economically inactive. How do we get those 9 or 10,000 people back into work? And those are the type of things I feel really passionate about. Something really I've not had a massive amount of experience in, skills, that type of thing. I've always just got on with it and, come from a very entrepreneurial, sort of private sector, non-corporate background. But I can see some real challenges. But I think, we are lucky. We've got some really good people working in and around, this area. We've got a new mayor. I've got a good relationship with the mayor. It's going to make a huge difference, I think, to the region. And you've got strong leadership in Barnsley. Rotherham Council's had its issues, but they've got some really good people at Rotherham as well. So I'm working with the chamber, being a key part of working closely with both of those authorities, really.
Well, taking that all together then, Matt, what's your overall vision personally for your role in these various boards and what you want to see for the area?
I think a key role that I play, and I really do feel this, is that I'm there to challenge. I think sometimes, without being constructively critical, some of them are a little bit heavy on the public sector. So what I can offer, both with my private sector hat on and obviously my chamber hat, is that ability to, raise my hand on these Zoom calls and say, you know, why are you doing that? Why don't we do it like this? Just to give it my bit of experience. I've got that experience, without, in that property sector, which has been unique, really. I've had the highs, I've had the lows. As somebody said to me the other day, this isn't my first rodeo, and I've got that experience in terms of, whether it's across the board on developments, and I am able to apply that, to a sort of a commercial setting, and so that's something I think I add to these boards. And sometimes it is a bit, maybe some of the things I come up with might be a little bit off the wall, but I'm keen to get people to think in slightly different ways, and for them to be, set some really ambitious goals. When we were chatting around, without breaching any confidentiality around the Towns Fund, I said, well, we're going to go for X million. I said, well, why not go for 50 million? Why not? Well, we can't because we Goldthorpe. I said, yeah, but that's why we should. That's my attitude. Is how I've always been. Trying, it's part of where I'm from. We've always had to punch above our weight. In Wales, it's the same. We've always had to fight for, fight for recognition, really. And I see myself as a little bit like that now as well with the chamber.
A real champion for the area, I would say. If you started your business journey again, going back to the beginning, what would you do differently?
You could say, for an easier life, probably go into a corporate environment, probably without the big battles that you have. But, I don't think I'd be where I am today had I not had the grounding of working within a relatively small family business. Again, punched well above its weight, delivered major projects with limited resources, if that makes sense. And I don't mean necessarily financial resources, I meant people. That's something maybe I would have ended up somewhere differently. I mean, many moons ago, before I ventured on this career into property, I was given an opportunity to go into another sector, a totally different sector, through a very close family member who's no longer with us. But he had a very senior job, so I won't say where it was now. But I often think, what if I had accepted that job with him, which actually was my job. I didn't have to apply for it. I just got offered it. Where would I have ended up? I certainly probably wouldn't have ended up in Sheffield. I probably wouldn't have still been back in Wales. But, I do sometimes think I had taken that opportunity, and I decided at the time not to take it. And I've not looked back, but it's just something I do think about sometimes.
Fascinating to hear your story, Matt. Just to bring it to a close, a couple of quick fire questions from me. First of all, who's the best coach you've ever had?
Probably my dad, I would say.
Very good.
Who made me what I am today, really.
And what advice would you give to an 18-year-old who's looking to go into a property career and to have influence in the same way that you've done?
I wouldn't say don't do it. Yeah, grab the bull by the horns. Ironically, I mean, to get to where I am today, whilst I have my degree, I'm not professionally qualified, which is interesting. So, I can tell you how much something's worth. I can do evaluation, but I'm not a qualified valuer. So, I would say, look, to do it the right way, probably get that university or that college, and other options are now available, T levels and other exciting things. But, get that proper sort of grounding from an educational perspective, and then go into it, but also try and get a broad range of experience. And that could actually be through, working on a construction site, because sometimes it's important you do get that, that experience of how complicated some of these things are, the world in which some of these contractors operate. And, at the same time, work with a good regional national agency, property agency doing lettings. So it's certainly something I would certainly encourage people to go into the property sector, because clearly it's a sector that, I mean, sort of, not just from a male female perspective, but, there are a lot of, I'm generalizing, but older people in that sector. And, we want to see more younger people coming through. We want to be able to offer, that good sort of estates background, that property background, because it's such an important thing in the world that we're in. And even though bricks and mortar, people might say, well, bricks and mortar, are going to decline. They're not. Ultimately, they're here to stay.
You mentioned taking the bull by the horns. What's your favourite quote?
I think Dylan Thomas said, "Ambition is critical," and I think that is really. I often think about that, and it then comes back to some of these other discussions that I have. Let's raise the bar. Let's not take second best for Barnsley. Let's get, if we're gonna have a hotel, let's have the best hotel. And I know this from experience where previously, the business I worked for, the guy I was working with there, he said, they said to me that they were trying to encourage a company to come to Barnsley, and Barnsley was Barnsley. They're never going to get, a high end operator to come to Barnsley. And we said, no, that's not right. If you do something, you do it right. Set your ambitions high. I've tried to do that in Goldthorpe as well. Set ambitions high, and maybe we'll end up somewhere below it, but we'll be better than, setting a low ambition and not getting that.
Well, Matt Stevens, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I'm sure we're going to see the impact of your influence in the area, and wish you all the best for the future.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tim.